Hi guys, Sarah here. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. In this video I'm going to talk about my art goals for 2022. And whilst I'm doing that, I'm going to be painting a watercolour ocean wave in my sketchbook. I'll be primarily using the Schmincke Horadam limited edition Ocean Grey watercolour that I showed you in my last art haul video. But I'll also be experimenting with mixing it with a few other colours on my palette too. So make sure you watch till the end to see how the painting turns out and what my final thoughts on it are as well. All of the materials I use for this painting will be listed in the description box below, along with a reference photo from Pixabay if you want to go and check them out. So without further ado, let's dive straight in with my first art goal, which is to try painting new subject matter. If you've been following my channel for a while, you'll know that I love painting animals. And this is where I feel most confident. But in order to develop my skills and grow as an artist, I think it's important to go out of your comfort zone now and then and paint something different. Like this ocean wave, for example. It's not something I've painted before and it wasn't without its struggles, but each time you try something new, you likely learn something new. So with this in mind, I'm thinking of finally giving landscapes a go this year. And maybe even breaking down the elements of a landscape and doing a few practice sessions in my sketchbook, trying different techniques for, say, skies, trees, clouds and water. So let me know if that's something you'd like to see. I definitely won't be giving up painting animals, but being able to better paint their surroundings will certainly help. My masking fluid is all dry now, so I can begin painting. I'm going to start with a moody grey sky in the background. To give the impression of soft distant clouds, I'm painting wet on wet using Daniel Smith's Payne's Blue Grey and my size 12 silver black velvet round brush. So my second art goal this year, alongside trying new subject matter, is to experiment with new mediums. If you saw my last art haul video, you'll know that I recently bought some Schmincke modelling paste, as well as some Holbein acrylic wash to try. So I'm really excited to see where that takes me. Trying new mediums can be a bit scary and a big learning curve, but that brings me to my third art goal, which is to try and be less fearful. And that includes being less fearful of making mistakes or being fearful of what others might think. I often feel that my perfectionism holds me back. Making mistakes is a great way to learn, and I know this, and yet I still try and avoid it, especially when recording videos for YouTube. To try and overcome this, I'm thinking of starting a sketchbook that I just keep for myself, at least for now, somewhere where I can give myself permission to play, and then I won't have to worry if it's not so good. But let me know if you have any other suggestions for overcoming perfectionism in your art, because I would really love to hear them. Sketchbooks are not only a great place to explore and try out new ideas, but also to try out new colour mixes. I mentioned at the start that I wanted to see how the Ocean Grey watercolour mixed with a few other colours on my palette. So I'm going to do this whilst waiting for my sky to dry. Here I'm testing how it mixes with Holbein's Cobalt Green, PG 18. And here with Mission Gold's Viridian, PG 7. Here's the Ocean Grey on its own. I also tried mixing it with Daniel Smith's Cobalt Teal Blue, PG 50. It's one of the granulating pigments already in the Ocean Grey, along with ultramarine blue and black. But I thought it would combine well to give a cleaner, brighter look for the crests of my wave. With that bit of preparation done, I can now start painting and move on to art goal number 4. Which is to try an art challenge or two. This might be a time challenge, or maybe one where I use a limited number of brush strokes, for example. I'm thinking it might help prevent me from overworking or fiddling too much with my paintings, and it might even encourage me to loosen up a bit too. If nothing else, it should be fun, so watch this space. I painted the background sea onto dry paper using concentrated ocean grey, and now that's dry I can move on to the main focus of this piece, the crashing wave. I'm using the same ocean grey watercolour here, but painting onto damp paper this time, to allow the granulating paint a bit of freedom to spread out and do its thing. And that brings me on to my next art goal. This is one that isn't going to be achieved overnight, but is something I want to keep in mind each time I paint, and that is to paint with more emotion, and perhaps relinquish some control. So rather than trying to replicate a reference photo exactly and approach a painting in a very technical way, I'd like to think more in terms of how a subject matter makes me feel, and try and convey that in a more expressive way, perhaps by more interesting use of colour, or how I lay my brush strokes down on the paper. This can be quite hard to do if you tend to paint from a reference photo at your desk. So another art goal for 2022 is to try plein air painting again. I did attempt this a couple of times last year, but found getting outside with all of my kit a challenge in itself. So I'm determined to be more organised and give it another go this year. Now, before I tell you my last art goal and my final thoughts on this painting, I just want to talk a bit more about this beautiful ocean grey watercolour. Granulating paints do some wonderful things when you add water, and this colour was perfect for this ocean wave, as it separated out into different blues, greens and turquoise. But as you saw when I painted the background, if painted onto dry paper, you can also achieve a darker, more even tone as well. I also used a bit of the dry brush technique in the right hand side to give the impression of light hitting the water, so it's pretty versatile. You can always lift out some colour too with a damp brush while the paper is still wet, or experiment with mixing with other colours, like I did here with the Viridian and Cobalt Teal. These bright, transparent watercolours help to add light and vibrancy to the wave. One thing to know with this ocean grey though is that it's semi-opaque, so it's not great for layering, as if you add further layers you risk covering up the effects underneath. So my top tip when using any granulating paints would be to try not to overwork or fiddle with it. Be bold from the start, try to use less brush strokes, less layers and let the paint do the work. Now that's all dry, I can remove the masking fluid. I used a mapping pen to apply it this time, which acts a bit like a dip pen for masking fluid, and was actually a suggestion from a viewer, and it worked really well. Masking fluid can leave unnaturally hard edges in your paintings though, so I did try to soften them a bit in places with a light glaze of cobalt teal blue. All that's left to do now is create the sea spray. Here I'm lifting out some colour using a clean damp brush, but I also add some splatter with white gouache and an old bristly paintbrush. So if you've made it this far, I have one last art goal, which is simply to paint more. You can learn a lot by observation, by watching others and reading books and so on, and I love doing all of those things, but you learn a lot more by actually doing and putting paint to paper, even if you only have a half hour to spare. I need to remember as well that it's not all about creating a masterpiece every time. A quick study or sketch can be equally valuable in levelling up your skills, without pressure or expectation. And it's often a lot of fun, so that's the plan. I think it's good to set yourself goals, and I think I've got enough to motivate and inspire me, but not too many as to be unachievable or overwhelming either. So let me know what you think, and I'd love to hear some of your art goals too, so drop me a comment in the box below. I think this painting turned out quite well in the end, but I think it would be interesting to try painting the white sea spray pattern over the top, maybe using my new acrylic wash next time, instead of masking it all out, and that might give a softer look. It was a lot of fun though, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how I can improve with a bit more practice. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and a share, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing before you go. Thank you all so much for watching, take care, have a great week, and I'll see you all in the next one.